You know, if you're feeling heroic because you gave up your big Thursday night to hang out with us, this is the only place on God's earth where they'll actually applaud because you came in to save your own life. Right? You know, I throw away my job, my house, my car, my relationship. You give me a little plastic chip, and I'm supposed to be happy? So if you're sitting here thinking about drinking, that beats the heck out of being in a bar right now thinking about getting sober. Welcome to AA. If you're waiting for the miracle to happen, guess what? It might have already happened. You're here. You know, I know that for me, you know, my mom and my family are sleeping better tonight because I'm here. And if I live to be 100 years old, I could never pay Alcoholics Anonymous back for that freedom and the relationships and the love and the roadmap to spiritual success that I've found because of Bill and Bob. You know, I want to welcome you again if you're new. I remember when I was new, my sponsor said to me, he said, Adam, I want you to buy a black suit. And I said, why? And he said, well, if you stick around Alcoholics Anonymous, it'll come in handy. Unfortunately, you'll go to a lot of funerals. And then he said something really nice. He said, oh, and by the way, if you drink again, at least we'll have something nice to bury you in. He was mean. You know, but my experience today is that if you baby the alcoholic, you'll bury him. I needed to hear the truth about alcoholism. That it was fatal, it was progressive, it was chronic. And I know a lot of people throw the phrase out, don't drink no matter what. But, you know, in my mind, I think, why don't you join Nancy Reagan's merry band of winners and just say no? When everything demands that I stand and deliver, I show up drunk. I have no effective mental defense against the first drink. I can't bring, like the big book says, into my consciousness with sufficient force the pain and suffering of a week or a month ago. I love it when people say, what's your drug of choice? I'm like, alcohol's my drug of no choice. I don't choose not to drink. I'm powerless. Yet when I become willing to take other seemingly unrelated actions, all of a sudden I have freedom from alcohol. And I really think in many ways that's the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, we talk about jails, institutions, and death. You know, that's kind of like hamburgers, fries, and a Coke. You know, but I do a lot of service in detox centers, and, you know, there's this language that you hear. It's, a second language. It's called victimese. Like they just can't seem to realize that the drinking bone connects to the detox bone. Or the jail bone. It's like a big leap for them. And I guess it was for me. That's why I have to continually stay in the middle of this thing. So I can stay really clear on the truth in my life about Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, that victimese thing that they have, it usually starts with, I lost everything. I'm like, I didn't lose anything. It was all drink coupons for me. You know, I know there's a relationship for me between willingness and surrender. And I see it in my life. They seem to be equally proportional. You ever notice you'll never see anybody more willing to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous than the guy that comes crawling through the back door of your home group after a long, hard run? And he'll do anything, right? 90 meetings in 90 days. First day out of detox, he's got 3 sponsors. Right? Wants to take our whole coffee pot home with him. Doesn't even have a trunk to put it in. That's how we lose half our literature. And that same guy, 30, 60, 90 days later, is looking me right in the eye saying, you mean we got to go to meetings every day? And like a prize fighter, I throw in the towel, And then I start to take the towel back one little piece at a time. I take my will back. And it's so interesting because you hear it in every meeting. People that do not recover, people that cannot or will not. And I look at my resistance, the thing that's blocking me from spiritual freedom. And you know what it is? It's another form of denial. Because we talk about admission, the opposite of admission for me is denial. But there's two kinds of denial for me. There's denial about the problem. But the greater aspect of denial for a drunk like me is about the solution. That these time-tested steps, this plan of action, this roadmap to spiritual success, it's not going to work for me. You know why it's not going to work for me? Because it wasn't my idea. Sound familiar? Like minds think alike. And I really had to come to terms with what that willingness is. And I understand for me today that there is a relationship between the act of surrender and the state of surrender. The act of surrender is what got me into AA over and over and over and over again as a newcomer. But see, the state of surrender is a completely different concept. That's kind of like what's keeping the old-timers here. It's completely different. It's kind of like watching a swan glide across a pond of still water. It's so beautiful, so effortless. It's so graceful. But you know what's going on under the water, right? That swan's paddling like hell. And if you're new, if you haven't noticed, we have a chapter in the big book, Into Action. We don't have a chapter into feelings. Go tell your therapist that. Right? We don't have a chapter into thinking. We ought to have a chapter into whining, right? From the podium. At the noon meeting. No offense. I'm like, get a job, man. And for me, like a lot of us, I became willing to take actions in Alcoholics Anonymous that I did not believe in. I was asked by my sponsor and my home group to set aside everything I thought I knew about AA, about the 12 steps, about God, so I could have a new experience with this thing. Everything that I thought I knew about God, about myself, and about others. Because if you added up those three relationships, when I came to AA, if you took my relationship with God plus my relationship with self plus my relationship with others, and you put an equal sign under it, it's simple math. You know what it equals, right? Detox. Now, in the therapeutic community, there's a science called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's expensive, right? In AA, it's $1. And it's one sentence. You can't think your way into right living, but you can live your way into right thinking. Very, very simple. Bring the body, the mind will follow. Now, for me, that was the hardest thing in the world to do. Because I couldn't set aside my old ideas. I couldn't let go of a belief system that I had established from the time I was a child. And it's so interesting because, we have a circle and a triangle, the three legacies of AA, recovery, unity, and service. And it's been revealed to me just from experience that triangle, recovery, unity, and service, translates into three specific actions for me. Contribute, belong, and learn. Contribute is service, belonging is unity, to learn is to uncover, discover, and discard what's blocking me. And the more that I sit in the center of that triangle and take those very simple actions, the more that I somehow feel wanted, needed, and loved in every area of my life. And if you're new, we can't give you that without taking the action. I couldn't experience that until I was willing to take actions here that I didn't believe in. It's just that simple. If there's a weight pile and I lift weights every day, am I going to get strong? Doesn't matter how I feel about it. What I think. And those simple actions in Alcoholics Anonymous eventually began to change my perception. All of my life I predicated everything on how I felt. I don't feel like showing up for work. I don't feel like sitting in the front. I don't feel like taking commitments. I don't feel like being responsible. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I had to reverse that process. And by taking the actions, my thinking and eventually my feelings changed. And it's just that simple. And if you're new, I wish we could give you that, but like everything else, I had to take the action. And we talk about drinking all day long. If you haven't experienced it, you couldn't really understand why we do what we do. That's why normies are like, I can't believe you did it again. You know, now, speaking about hospitals and institutions, H&I, I do a lot of H&I. You know why? Because I'm an alumni from everywhere. And one of the panels that I have at the Veterans Administration, you know, I've had it for years. One of the greatest illustrations of surrender that I'd ever experienced came out of one of those panels at the VA. Now you get into a room, you know, we have big meetings at the VA in West LA, you know, maybe like 100, 150 guys, soldiers. Now you get in a room full of soldiers and you start talking about surrender. You know what happens, right? Room gets quiet, dead quiet, especially Marines. You know, but if you ever watch a soldier surrender like on CNN, the illustration's perfect. And you might want to relate it to alcohol if you're new. You ever watch a soldier surrender, you'll see the soldier take the rifle, very slowly lay it on the ground, sit down on the side of the road, wait for someone to tell him what to do. Right? When you got 40 AK-47s pointed at your head, you don't throw down the gun with an attitude. Kind of like these guys put their court cards in the basket. Think about it. You're not sitting on the side of the road looking back at the gun, because if you do, someone's going to shoot you. Am I looking back at alcohol? Am I looking back at the magic that I once found in booze? Is that the euphoric recall, the peculiar mental twist, the lurking reservation that Wilson talks about? Is that what it is? It's so interesting because for me, when I look back at it, it's almost like I'm in the high school gym 25, 30 years later. Girls are gone, the lights are out. It's an empty room, it's dark. I'm all by myself in that room saying, where's the party? Now there's no disco ball where I was drinking. You know, we talk about my worst day sober is better than my best day drinking. My worst day sober is better than my last day drinking. And I think about those moments when life had its moments, and for those moments as an alcoholic, I'm willing to give my life to recapture and recreate the magic that I once found in booze. It's almost like Oz never gave the Tin Man anything he didn't already have. What am I trying to put in myself that's not already there? Because that idea will kill me. You know, it's interesting because there's a guy named Dr. Harry Tiebout, and you can look him up on the internet. It's not an outside issue. In fact, he's one of the contributing members to some of our original literature. And Tiebout talks about the difference between compliance and surrender. And it's interesting because, you know, compliance by definition is cooperation without agreement. And I've been in compliance with AA for years, doing it for sober living, doing it for the judicial system, doing it for the parole department, doing it for DCSF. Where I live on the west side of LA, they do it for the trust fund. But see, that concept of surrender, kind of like that soldier that lays down that rifle, that concept is unconditional. If you're new, for me, I had to see that there could be no reservation. I had to get to AA on my own terms. That's freedom. I mean, we say freedom is another definition for nothing else to lose. I had nothing else to lose at that point. It became do or die for me. You know, and I eventually got to that place and I was able to see the truth. Because if you're like me as an alcoholic,